Hey, your quizzes, those were really good quizzes. A couple that weren't spectacularly good, but generally they were really good. So super easy to grade. Can someone shut the door, please? Would you put the blocker in though so that we don't have to unlock it for people? Thanks. All right. Oh, that's not on. I gotta turn it on first. It won't work if you don't turn it on. All right, today's the 3rd. Today. Yep, sound good? Sure. So yes, 3rd, and this is the practice quiz. And this is the 2nd practice quiz. This is the one that was over square roots and completing the square. So yeah, these will be the 2 methods. So same format. I've actually already got the quizzes ready. So there's going to be 4 on the front, 4 on the back, just like this, man. So like if this goes well and you understand all this stuff, then you'll have no troubles. What do you need, bud? We got it yesterday after the quiz. Yeah, so let's get to it. First one says x squared equals 80. And so that's going to be take the square root of both sides. So when we take the square root of both sides on the left-hand side, and this one's, bless you, this one's all ready to rock and roll. You don't have to move anything around or anything, no prep work. So when I square root this left side, I just get x equals. And then, of course, I immediately write positive, negative. And then when I square root this side, I get the square root of 80. And this is one of those numbers that should be in your notes. Like it could be on one of those cheat sheets that you have, like the square root paper. You could add this on there. You should always have like a collection of these. I called them death numbers when we first learned them. That's maybe a bit traumatic, but they're numbers that just are terrible. 80, 32, 48, 72, 96. There's a collection of them that as we encounter them, we as humans are very likely to miss. Because normal people don't see 80 and think 16 times 5. It's just not what we do. It's not how we're wired. We see 4 times 20 and 10 times 8 and stuff like that. So you just use your resources and just know that when you see the square root of 80, 100% of the time, we, all math people, need you to break it down into root 16 times root 5, which of course then becomes 4 root 5. So that is a completed answer. And I wrote multiple versions of the quiz last night, and I can tell you that in every version, whether you're 1st hour, 5th hour, 7th hour, no matter what version you get, there are death numbers sprinkled throughout. And again, those numbers, make sure you find them. Go back and look in your notes or ask me later. 32, 48, 80, 72, 96. There's probably a couple more. But when you see them, they're terrible numbers because big numbers hide in them, and we're just not wired to think that way. So that's where the resource comes in handy. So we don't have to reinvent that wheel every time. We just use our resource and look it up and go, I know what this is. So that's that. Any questions on the first one? All right. Second one is the format looks a little bit different, but honestly, like at its core, it's really fundamentally the same idea. We have something squared equal to a number. And so because there's no stuff here or here, then we know we don't have to do any prep work. Like we don't have to add anything or subtract or divide or any of that. It's just boom, ready to roll. So again, we just hop right in and we take the square root of this side and we just get x minus 3. Nice and clean. We write equals, we write positive, negative, so we don't forget. And then we square root this side and we get the square root of 20. And yet again, we should by now be thinking in terms of, like I've seen this before, right? What 2 numbers do we root this with? You bet, 4 and 5, 100% of the time. Because then the 4 becomes a 2 And my answer then is now x minus 3 equals positive negative 2 root 5. And then what's that last step? Move that 3. And remember that minus 3 is going to go across the equal sign and place himself right there and name himself plus 3, positive 3, because when you move, you switch. If you jump in equals, you switch. So we wind up with x equals 3 plus or minus 2 root 5. Done. Any questions so far at all? Good so far? All right. The next one, it's not number 3, but it would be number 3 if they had numbers, of course, is just like the second one, only there is prep work involved. So the idea is we're trying to isolate the thing that is squared. So that means that, so let me change this to yellow for you. Anything that's written in yellow, we need to isolate so that we can take the square root of that thing. And that thing, that yellow thing, is like, get that alone. Don't tinker, don't mess with the 6, just get that quantity alone so that we can square root it down. So step 1 is to move the 11, which gives us 4x plus 6 squared equals 25. And then we divide by 4, and we realize that we can't divide by 4, but we've practiced this before. Now we're left with x plus 6 squared equals a fraction. So just call it 25, call it what it is, 25 divided by 4. Still good? All right. These are invariably more difficult questions because of the basic skills that's about, the basic skills test that's about to emerge. So when I square root the left side, that's light work. I just get x plus 6. Nice. Finally, the parentheses and the exponent are gone, but I write equals, positive, negative. And how do you square root this fraction? Yeah, you just hit them both. So the square root of the top is 5, and the square root of the bottom is 2. Ooh. But I just have known for years now, and this gets worse every generation, that unfortunately, this is where the hard part for a lot of us begins, the basic skills. So we have to move the 6 now to the other side. And so we have x equals negative 6 plus or minus 5 over 2. And we've done this, I don't even know how many times, so it's not like this would catch you off guard, but what do we have to do now to that number right there? Yeah, you have to multiply it by 2 because you want it to be a fraction that has a bottom of 2. Negative 6, remember, can be anybody you want him to be. He could be negative 6 over 1. He could be negative 24 over 4. He could be negative 600 over 100. He's a chameleon. He can be anything you want. But we very specifically want him to be negative 12 over 2 because we want this bottom number to match this bottom number. So I'm going to take the negative 6 and I'm going to swap it out with something that still equals negative 6, but is compatible with the fraction next to it. And we have a couple steps left now from here. The next step is to sort of melt all this stuff in this purple object. We got to melt all that kind of together. And you don't want to try to do the math yet. What you do want to do, though, is just create one fraction. So we're going to call it negative 12 plus or minus 5, and we're just going to put all of that over one single 2. That's the idea with fractions. If you can make it this far, you're almost there. You're on the doorstep. Remember now the pathways. And so I hope by now you all know what I mean when I say that I just mean there is a top pathway that you literally follow. And you just do this problem, like follow the red arrow. You go negative 12 plus 5 divided by 2. Just like that. What is negative 12 plus 5? Yeah. And then negative 7 over 2 is not going to end well, so I'm just going to leave it as negative 7 over 2. And then I go back to the beginning and I go back to where I chose the plus pathway and I reset my course. And I say, now I'm going to trace the minus pathway. And again, just follow the math problem. What's negative 12 minus 5? and it's going to be over 2. And again, I look at that and say, well, I can't really do anything with that. So I'm just going to leave it as what it is, negative 17 over 2. And that's how a problem like that should shake out. You wind up with two what we call rational solutions. They're rational when they don't have roots, when they're just normal numbers, fractions, decimals, uh, whatever. Good. All right, one more in the top section. And this one again is, I'm going to use colors for your educational convenience. I feel like colors would help me if I were in your seat, and so that's why I use them. Your job is to get the yellow thing by itself. It's not going to end well if you don't do that. So you have to follow basic algebra properties. And of course, by now, you know to add 9 first. So we're going to be left with negative 3 times the thing we're trying to get by itself equals, and what's negative 105 plus 9? Perfecto. We're still not there though, right? The yellow thing still has that pesky number with it and it's not ready. It's like, don't root me yet. Don't try to root me yet. I got a clinger over here. I gotta get rid of this guy. So to do that, we got to divide by negative 3. And if we divide both sides by negative 3, then we get to the place where we want to be. X squared equals positive 32. And I double dog dare you now to tell me that this is any different than the first one we did like 7 minutes ago. It's the same problem. I mean, different number, but the same idea. So once we make it to this point, then it's time to do the thing, and that is square root both sides. So on the left, we get x equals positive negative, and then the square root of 32 is one that you definitely should have on your cheat sheet. Because yeah, and I'm just glad. I think our days of people saying 4 times 8 are getting almost behind us. Like, thank you for that. 16 in the first root, 2 in the second root, which gives us 4 root 2. And that is done. Good. Any questions on the top half? All right, let's head to the bottom. The bottom is completing the square. And for completing the square, we again want to follow, there's always like math problems always have like the how do I start struggle, you know? And again, make notes. Make yourself a page of notes. 5 minutes, you can make a good page of notes that'll just get you what you need. That just remind myself what to do first. So the very first problem, I have x squared, and I have plus 16x, and I got this pesky minus 98, and I just know now, because it's in my notes. I know exactly what to do. What is it? Move the 98. Right? So we're going to say x squared and plus 16x, just stay. Just hang out for a minute. I'm going to leave an empty space where that pesky minus 98 was. I'm going to move him to the other side and, of course, make him positive 98. For these top 2 problems where there is no number right where this red arrow is pointing, that is what you do. Now it's time to complete the square. And the completing the square algorithm is never going to change from this. It's never like you're not going to get to like the next class and go, oh, well, I got it. No, it's never different. It's always the same. You take half of the number that's in the middle. I'm going to point to it for you. And that number is named plus 16. And half of him is plus 8. And then what do I do with that? I square it. And what is 8 squared? So I will follow the procedure and I will add 64. And then so as to not get struck by lightning via the math gods, I will, of course, then add 64 to the other side as well. And now it's time to factor. This expression needs to be factored. And I say what I've said before, and I stand by this. You could teach this process to a kid who doesn't know how to factor, because you don't have to understand to make 2 shells and put your X in your X and find numbers that multiply. This is like our 50th go at this. And we know that the way it's going to go is it's going to be X, and that number goes in there. Which is why I get cranky when I circle a number and I say, what's half of plus 16? And people just say 8. I'm trying to get you to say plus 8. Or when I say, what's half of minus 10? I need you to say minus 5. Because that sign that's half of that number travels with him into the next step. So try to convince yourself to start thinking in those terms. Don't see numbers and their signs. And then on the right-hand side, I just got to do a little bit of kitty math. What's 98 plus 64? 162. And again, sorry, I would challenge you at this point, double, triple dog dare you to tell me that this problem is any different now than the second problem on the quiz. It's not. So completing the square is the process by which we turn it into one of the top problems where we just now use square roots. So now that we've gotten where we need to be with a square, this is called a square. I take the square root of it, and what do I get? Yeah. And then I just write equals positive negative so I don't get yelled at or in trouble. And then I take the square root of the right side, and I've got some work to do now. So we go off to the side, and we write down that square root, and we build 2 branches, and we build 2 roots, and then we work. We go to town. And the reason I'm hopping ahead is because I know and you know that 162 is not square rootable. 144 would have been, and 169 would have been, but 162 is like a tweener. So if anything, we're going to have to tree it. We can't just straight up root it. Anyone figure out 162, Zainer? Good job, Zane. Good job. So yeah, we're going to stick an 81 and a 2. That's the absolute best we're going to do for 162. The first one you would have found, by the way, would have been 9 times 18, I think. And you want to be careful to say, no, I'm not going to settle for you. I found 9 times 18, but I'm not going to give myself some gold medal because I know that 18 is not dead. Therefore, 9 is not the best I can do. You travel deeper into the red list and you go and you're like, oh, now I'm sure I found the best. And that becomes 9 root 2. If you haven't figured this out, there's really no avoiding this. Like you can't, it's like saying I want to be a writer, but I really suck at like writing and coming up with I guess that's probably not the best career choice for you. You can't be a good mathematician if you don't know how to break down roots. So that's just something that you've probably figured out by now. You got to be good at that. And so I'm going to take the 9 root 2, and I'm going to take where it used to say root of 162, and I'm going to sub in the better version of that. There's only one thing left to do. What is it? Move the 8. So we have x equals negative 8 plus or minus 9 root 2. Done. Questions there? Okay. Next problem is going to feel pretty much just like that. Like structurally, it's pretty much the same. So I'm going to have my x squared and my minus 6x, and you have a paper in front of you, so I don't need to copy the original problem. That minus 23 needs to go bye-bye. So I'm going to leave a space where he used to be, move him to the other side, and don't you dare forget to make him a positive. And then you just follow the steps. I hope you're getting bored. I must be doing something right if you're getting sick of this, because I mean, we are doing something right if you're getting sick of this, because that means, all right, you get it. It's stuck in your head. It never changes. What is half of minus 6? It is minus 3. Not 3. Thank you for saying minus. Square that negative 3 minus 3. What do you get? Always a positive. Always a positive. Very good. So when you square this number over here, you get 9. So I add 9, go to the other side, do the same. And now it's time to factor. And again, you can do this step if you've never even heard of factoring. You're a robot. You could be a little math robot. Just go, I'm going to do this the same every time. I'm going to put parentheses squared. And then I'm going to put x. And I'm going to take that number, that purple number, I'm going to copy it in. I just factored. Didn't even know it, but I factored. Then on the right, got to do a little bit of kitty math. What's 23 plus 9? 32. And that is a death number because, again, we're going to train 4 and 8 out of ourselves. We're going to just condition ourselves to not ever say that again. So getting a little ahead of myself. Let's square root the left. What do we get? Equals positive, negative. And then, of course, we've seen this, and I think we actually saw this one just very recently. What is the square root of 32? It is 4 root 2. Because, again, it would have broken into branch, root, 16, 2. Good job. And the last step is add the 3. So we get x equals positive 3 plus or minus 4 root 2. Still good? What changes on these bottom two problems, the last two? You have to divide, right? And so I'm not going to give you any that require fractions in completing the square. I made that decision within the last couple of days. Like, I don't want to go down that road. I don't want that to be the crux of what you're trying to do. So these will always come out nice for you. I'll make sure of that. So when we divide everything in the equation by 2, because, and by the way, if you don't know why we're doing that, it's because this number with the red arrows needs to get gone. This process isn't happening with him there. So we're going to divide all the parts here, here, here. Everybody gets the equal treatment division by 2. And then we get x squared minus 8x, leave a space, equals 20. And here we go again. Third verse, same as the first. What is half of minus 8? It is minus 4. And when you square minus 4, what do you get? So I'm going to add 16 to both sides, and the square is now complete. And now I have to factor without even really knowing that I'm factoring. I very robotically do this and this. And what do I trail that x with? You bet. Take that purple number up there and just going for a ride. And again, you got to always do a little math. Over here, 20 plus 16 is. All right, and here we are again. Time to square root. If I square root the left-hand side, I get x minus 4. And I just write this without even. It's like my pen just takes over and does it for me. Equals positive, negative. What's the square root of 36? Yeah, I don't need a tree for this. It's just 6. It's one of those times where you're like, oh, yeah, I know where we're going with this now. This is going to be a pathway problem because there's no more roots to get in my way. There's no more root blockers. So now I'm going to move the 4, and I'm going to write x equals positive 4 plus or minus 6, and it's time to trace the pathways. You got to do a little second, third grade math here. What's 4 plus 6? So one of your answers is 10. And then you got to do a little more kitty math. What's 4 minus 6? Presto, done. So that's what your answers should always come out to look like when the roots all disappear. Sometimes they're fractions, sometimes they're not, but they're just regular numbers. That's the idea. Nothing to it, huh? Last one, and then I'm after this will take just a couple minutes. I can give you more practice if there's any type that you know you struggle with, or I can give you time to work on a page of notes. I'll just kind of be whatever you need me to be for the last 10 minutes. If you need more help, you actually not only can you have to. Yeah. Listen, as soon as you see a problem and someone says we're going to do completing the square, I don't care what else happens after this. We are dividing everything by 3. But your math teacher is aware of certain things, and I'm going to give you numbers that can divide by 3. So I'm not going to be evil and give you like 3x squared and then give you like a 10x and an 8. I'm not out to get you. I'm going to make all the numbers play nice for you. So we're going to leave I'll just copy the whole thing down because I started now. Yeah, so like that. Everybody gets the same treatment. 3 is the boss man. It says you're all going to divide like me. So now we're going to go through and get x squared plus, how many x's? 14. And then I'm going to leave a space. And I'm going to do a couple things at once. So if I go too fast, just tell me. But I'm doing 2 steps. What's 9 divided by 3? And I'm also going to move it to the other side just to save a little bit of time. So instead of writing +3, I'm going to move it to the other side and write -3. Good. And now the groundwork is laid, and that, I shouldn't say this, but like almost boring process repeats again. What is half of +14? +7. And what is +7 when we square it? So I shall add 49 to both sides. And then I shall factor without even really being aware of the fact that I'm doing it. I will copy down my X, and then I will copy this purple number right down in there like that. Done. Factored. What's -3 plus 49? 46. And now we have to do the square root on both sides. And square root the left side, you get X plus 7 equals positive negative. What's the square root of 46? Right. You can't do anything with it. It's not a prime number, right? To be clear, it could be 23 times 2, but we're not interested in that because it's not any good to us. So 46 is what I like to call a dead root. And so we like these because they just involve less work. Like a dead root is always a welcome addition to the end of a problem. You're like, sweet. So last step is move 7, and you get X equals -7. Bless you, plus or minus root 46. And that is Dunzell, Washington. Are there any more that you'd like to practice? Because I can conjure up practice problems for this type relatively simply. If there's any type that you feel like, I kind of suck at those. Anything? Uh-huh. No, quiz is tomorrow. So we're going to do quizzes this week. The quiz yesterday on factoring quadratic formula, quiz tomorrow over square roots and completing the square like this. Sure. Any questions before I stop the recording? Anything that anyone needs help with? All right.